3 disdainful strokes. It just seems so unlikely that a Siege Rhino or a Butcher of the Horde will resolve. And even if one does, you have 4 Banishing Light, 2 Devouring Light. It seems like Jim Davis can clean up pretty easily too.
This should be fun, as Nelson's deck is very interesting, though Davis is on 5, so the first game may not be that fun. It's a Tranquil Cove here for Jim. He's at 21. Brad's going to sacrifice his Wooded Foothills. We'll see if it's a forest or mountain in this greedy 4-color deck. It's going to be the mountain again.
Yeah, and this is one of the things, there isn't as good of card advantage in Standard right now. If you look at the ways that Jim Davis draws more cards, he only has 2 copies of Divination, next to 3 copies of Jace's Ingenuity, and 3 Dig Through Time. But the card advantage cards that are available are pretty limited, and a lot of them are very expensive.
Sylvan Caryatid, kind of the glue that holds it all together. He didn't need it the last time we watched him. We'll see if he needs it here. It's just an island for Davis before passing the turn back. Nelson will draw a copy of Temple of Plenty. This is a Courser. See if this resolves.
Jim did draw Jace's Ingenuity, so if things line up right for him, he will be able to still play his card advantage game.
Nullify is going to take care of Courser. Temple of Plenty is going to leave the top card on top as we do go back to Davis. Looks like it's a Devouring Light was the draw.
Yeah, he's got land for number 3, but that's where it ends.
And just a Delta before passing the turn back. Nelson very quickly draws his card. Looks like it was a copy of Siege Rhino. I wouldn't want to put that one on the bottom either. Here's 3 mana. Another attempt at a Courser. Take a look.
Brad's just trying to get value right now. If one of these cards is going to sneak by, it's actually better for a Courser to sneak by than a Siege Rhino too. Over the course of a game, Courser will get Brad more advantage than Rhino would.
The reveals of this deck are hilarious. I'm sorry.
Just Crackling Doom.
Courser. All right, what's the top card? This. What? What is that doing in there? Gonna play a Bloodstained Mire 2 before passing the turn back. Jim is gonna draw an island for the turn. Oh, Brad.
So you look at the tools in his hand. Devouring Light, Jace's Ingenuity, Dig Through Time, and it looks like a Disdainful Stroke.
Yeah, the problem here for Jim, of course, is that he only has 1 white mana, so Devouring Light is currently offline. This isn't a format where your Delta can just search for anything. He's got to find a swamp or an island with it, and in this deck it is just search for an island.
Can't imagine Brad wants to draw Crackling Doom.
I wouldn't be surprised, though he will.
Interesting. All right.
Top card's a mountain here. It does give him a little bit of protection against a card like Prognostic Sphinx, if he cares about that.
What it could also be is if Brad doesn't have another land and he really wants to hit his land drop, the uncracked fetch land may be too valuable of a commodity.
There's the attack for 2. Dave's going to take a little bit of damage. He's down to 19. Nelson's going to go reaching. This is a Siege Rhino. Davis going to go to his grip now and take a look. You mentioned Disdainful Stroke. I think he does have one there. And you see it now, and he will cast it. So Siege Rhino's going to leave, and we'll go back Jim's way.
If he had a sweeper, he maybe could have let that resolve, but he does not.
Radiant Fountain.
Does it land 5, so this turns on Jace's Ingenuity.
He's actually fighting back pretty well here, given the mulligan to 5.
He can Dig Through Time or Jace's Ingenuity on end step here because of that uncracked polluted Delta. But what that does mean is that he's going to take a lot of pain this turn.
Lightning Strike the draw. Sandstorm Citadel going to come into play off a Courser. So Nelson's going to go up to 22. And now Sylvan Caryatid will be the draw next turn, potentially, if Brad doesn't crack that Bloodstained Mire.
Courser's doing a great job of providing Brad with card advantage. However, it's kind of being offset by the fact that some of the cards he's drawing are things like Sylvan Caryatid or Crackling Doom, things that are not entirely worth a card in this matchup.
Here's an attack for 2. Now, Nelson does have a copy of a Johnny Mentor of Heroes in his hand. If that resolves, it's a fantastic card in the matchup. The question is he going to cast it? It looks like the answer is yes. So he's going to see if this slides through. And Davis is going to look at his hand.
Well, it's going to.
Can't be thrilled about this. This is the kind of Planeswalker that if it slides through against a control deck, it takes it all by itself. We're going to take a look at the first couple of cards here.
This was probably the worst card of the lot for Brad to get to resolve.
He gets to take a look at the top 4 now and take a creature or an aura, or heck, even a Planeswalker to his hand.
Because once this guy's in play, there are 4 Banishing Light that Jim can use to get rid of it, but that's really it.
Butcher of the Horde is going to go to hand. Crackling Doom is the top card of the deck. Davis is going to sacrifice his blue Delta, go down to 18, get an island out of his deck, and we'll see if it's going to be Dig or if it's going to be Jace's Ingenuity.
there's a lot of things he needs. He needs another white source. He needs some answers. I think he probably draws 3 here just because then he can play his dig cheaper later on. But yeah, he's got a lot of work to do. He has to deal with currently a planeswalker and a board full of creatures. He also has to take care of the butcher that hasn't been cast. Draws. He did find that banishing light that he needed.
That's a big deal.
And he found a dissolve. So that does cover the butcher and the Ajani for now. And his life total's not too low. This is okay for Jim Davis.
And that's the big deal, is that his life total isn't that low. You would feel like he'll only get a 5. This game's taking a few turns. Shouldn't he be around like 10? He's at 18 is so much. He plays a Flooded Strand. There's Banishing Light. So he finds the answer to Ajani. And as you mentioned, he has a Dissolve in his hand too, and a second source of white mana there in the Flooded Strand. So that may have been the best Jace's Ingenuity that he could have possibly had. Nelson's going to draw a copy of Crackling Doom. Top card down to Satyr Wayfinder.
If Brad doesn't cast anything into this Dissolve in Jim's hand, the fetch land there will let him cast a Dig Through Time as well. And things may just be okay for Jim. Brad is stockpiling burn though, so he's got to be, the life totals are a little closer than it might look.
Gonna tap 4 mana. Is it time for the Butcher? Or at least an attempt?
This is the thing, Brad's deck's mid-rangey enough that he just he more or less has to keep deploying threats into Jim's removal and just hope that Jim runs out.
I think that's the trick, right? Where if you try to pace yourself, you know, you might be playing into their hands, but if you just say, all right, Windmill Slam this, Windmill Slam this, Windmill Slam this, you know, eventually they'll run out, or hopefully they just don't have it at the right point, and if they don't, you're going to win pretty easily.
But this is, you know, classically why this is, you'd want to play control against something like what Brad's doing. It's because Brad's paying 4 mana for all these creatures, and Jim's paying 3 and 2 for the counter spells.
It looks like he's going to start by attacking for 2. And Davis is going to let that go. And Nelson is just going to pass the turn back. Thought about casting Butcher of the Horde, won't do that. So Davis is going to sacrifice the Strand. He's going to go down to 15, get a Plains, and as you said, we might see him dig now.
Yeah, and I think he will. This is where his whole deck being instant speed, or most of his deck being instant speed, really helps him out.
Yeah, this has been a really exciting tournament for me to cover so far, hopefully for you too, because we've seen just a lot of different decks. You know, Blue-White Control is a deck that coming into this format, if I told you this was a deck, you'd be surprised with Revelation rotating out and losing Supreme Verdict and Detention Sphere and Azorius Charm, and instead, you've got a pretty capable deck here. I mean, this is a game on a mulligan of 5, and it looks like Jim is competing just fine. He's got a lot of options here. I think at least one Disdainful Stroke over there.
Got a couple Banishing Lights, a Disdainful Stroke.
Is there a card that he was hoping to find here, like in particular?
Well, I don't really think so. Maybe a Jace's Ingenuity would be the card I'd really want to find. It depends. He needs to make sure he has everything covered. And then once he does, he just wants to draw more cards.
Take a draw. Temple of Enlightenment. There's also a Radiant Fountain there, too. Love the way Radiant Fountain works in this deck. It's no Mutavault, but I guess what is.
It looks like Jim just took 2 counter spells there. Really just the counter everything draw cards strategy. Brad still is getting free cards off that Courser. Jim can't be too happy with that.
Yeah, it's been in play for a long time.
Yeah. And he's
generating a
taking
nice
2.
advantage. Yeah, true.
Let's add it up.
It's weird to think, you know, try to put a number on how many cards Courser has drawn this game. Between the damage that it's dealt and, you know, you're giving away a little bit of information, but you're also gaining a little bit of information and drawing some lands. It feels like it's drawn a couple of cards this game.
Sure.
Radiant Fountain's going to come and undo some of the work that Courser has done. Davis is back up to 17. Satyr Wayfinder the draw. Take a look at the top card here. It's another copy of Crackling Doom.
Well, maybe, I wonder if Brad keeps this one. You know, how much burn is he going to keep in his hand? Remember that the way this Jim's deck pulls out of range of burn is with Pearl Lake Ancient and Radiant Fountains.
It's an attack for 2. Devouring Lights.
All right, so now here's the answer for Courser. Jim now with enough cards that he feels like he can spend a card taking care of Courser.
Brad taking a look at his hand. He's been very patient, has Nelson. not casting Butcher, top card going to be turned down here. There's Satyr Wayfinder, so he's going to go past the Crackling Doom. We'll see the top couple of cards, assuming this does resolve. Siege Rhino among them. There's a Temple of Plenty. So those go to the bin. The Temple will go to the grip. That'll allow Brad to set his draw for next turn. Top card goes to the bottom very quickly. And Nelson's just going to pass the turn back with Davis at 17. He'll quickly untap those 3 lands and draw a card. The Temple is how we'll start things off. Take a look at a copy of Last Breath. Not a great card in this matchup.
It's okay that it hits Courser, but now that he's already taken care of the Courser, he probably ships it. I think if he'd have found that a turn earlier, he would have kept it so that he would be able to then Last Breath the Courser and then keep Devouring Light for the Butcher he knows about. But with Courser gone, you're right. Last Breath goes to the bottom.
Brad's on kind of like a funky, I'm going to try to burn you out plan.
I think so, which kind of shows why this is a trickier matchup for him.
Because he just drew another copy of Lightning Strike. I believe he's got 2 strikes and 2 Crackling Dooms in his hand, so quick math.
10.
That's 10 of 16. That's if Jim doesn't gain any life. Jim does draw a copy of End Hostilities. He's been sandbagging that Butcher for a while, too. Island's going to go to the bottom. Jim doesn't need lands anymore.
What I'm interested by with Brad's line, I'm interested when he's going to actually play the Butcher here. So he's been saving it for a while for what he thinks is an opportune moment. So I'm wondering when that will be. Right now, the Satyr Wayfinder is dealing 1 damage at a time. So he's got some pressure on Jim, but not very much. Butcher would certainly increase that by a lot.
We can't forget about, too, the turn where he thought about casting the Butcher and tapped the 3 lands and then carry added. And then he unwinded and he thought a little while and then he just made an attack with Courser and passed the turn back. A player with Jim's caliber isn't going to miss out on something like that. He picks up on that information. So you have to assume that, okay, if it's not a Butcher, it's a Rhino or something, but you have some sort of threat that you elected not to cast. There's a stance of Citadel after the attack and just passing the turn back.
One thing that Butcher can do is if he eventually gets to the point where he starts burning Jim on Jim's end step, then the fact that Jim knows Brad has a Butcher means that Jim won't want to use counter spells on the burn, because he knows if he does, that Butcher will resolve and hit him. So he can maybe force through his burn spells by having the threat of Butcher the Horde.
Radiant Fountain is such a beating. Just comes in, undoes 2 attacks from the Satyr Wayfinder. Brad gets attacked from 1 again on his turn, of course. So he puts Jim down to 16. But it's actually kind of a beating. Davis draws his card for the turn.
2 life is not an irrelevant number. That's a lot for a land to be making.
Huh?
Especially when that comes into play untapped.
Jim's going to draw and just pass his turn back. This is a really interesting game. Both players are just kind of playing draw go and both kind of jockeying for position. Stance of Citadel is going to come in for Brad. He'll pass the turn back. When is Brad ever going to make his move? Is Jim well, I think Jim's going to make his move now.
So he's found the 1-of finisher. This is the Pearl Lake Ancient. And this is going to be a thorn in Brad's game plan because of Jim's ability to repeatedly gain life with this guy.
Though, to be fair, this might be part of the reason that Brad actually kept the Crackling Dooms.
He wants to try to win the game in a post-Pearl Lake Ancient situation.
Yeah, I mean, Pearl Lake Ancient does counter. I mean, it takes care of this. So, to me, it is a convenient way of taking care of this card. Now, we have this little game of I'll play this, all right, I'll bounce it back and forth and all that stuff. You see an attack here for 1.
So maybe when Jim makes the Pearl Lake Ancient, Brad Crackling Dooms him multiple times and just sees just how many lands Jim was willing to pick up.
Yep. And I think we're going to have that battle right now. So here we go. There's Pearl Lake Ancient. Jim is happy with the way he's tapped mana for it.
Asked if it resolves, yes. It can't be countered.
Yeah. Are you Crackling Dooming this yet? What's the deal? This is the fight. This is the move now. For Jim, though, he's got to be happy, right? Because this all takes place on Brad's turn.
Yeah, this is on Brad's end step. I mean, this is how he wins the game.
So here's Crackling Doom number 1. And Jim is kind of looking at his lands and saying, all right, well, if I pick some of these up and return this, and how are all these things going to break? You see the 3 Radiant Fountains. Those are probably appealing to pick up. There's also 2 temples out there, too.
Right.
Aha.
2 fountains and a temple picked up. So he's attempting to bounce Pearl Lake Ancient. Will Brad Crackling Doom him again?
And the answer is yes.
This is why he presumably kept the Crackling Dooms. Does Jim want to pick up? This is interesting to me. Does he want to pick up 3 more lands, or does he want? Is he willing to use a dissolve?
I can't see myself personally dissolving a Crackling Doom in this matchup. Now, like if I'm in Jim's seat, I know I don't know the chances are I don't know the exact composition of Brad's deck, because what Brad's doing is new.
Mm-hmm.
But is this the best I can do with my dissolve? Really?
It could be worse. I really don't want to go down to 4 lands in play.
I don't want
If
to
I'm
either.
Jim.
I mean, I might be okay with just letting this thing die. I have Elspeth in my deck.
He might kill all of those. I think there's a concern that if he lets this guy die,
Winning is pretty hard.
yeah. And bouncing 3 more lands means he's going to have to discard a lot of lands. There's a really big price to bouncing it again.
Yeah, that's why I don't want to bounce the lands. The discard aspect is like too big. Also, I mean, part of the appeal of playing control deck and why it generates an advantage is because you have this huge swath of lands in play. You can do multiple things in one turn.
Right. There is that tension with Pearl Lake Ancient, that control decks are the ones that want to play Pearl Lake Ancient, and they're the ones that really don't want to be bouncing their lands.
Yeah, Jim is giving this a lot of thought. You can tell he values his Pearl Lake Ancient very, very highly. Wow. He's moving it back again.
And I don't know if he floated mana.
I don't know either. I'm genuinely surprised by this. All right, it's back. He will have to do some discarding.
Oh yeah, well he
We
just
know
put
that.
7 more cards in his hand. So,
And Hostility is the draw. There's a fountain. It's going back up. He's already ready to discard one of those. See, that's so telling about what he values in the matchup.
yeah.
If he's willing to go through that, pick up 6 lands, and he's going to discard a bunch of cards here, that is really telling.
Well, one thing that's different about this Blue-White Control from last season's Blue-White Control is that this deck doesn't use all of its lands as well as Revelation did. I mean, of course, it's a control deck. It would love to have a lot of lands in play, don't get me wrong. But a lot of times, they don't have anything to do with them. You know, their counterspells don't have any cards with X in their mana cost. They don't have creatures with big activated abilities. Like, in a lot of ways, the purpose behind your land number 10 is Pearl Lake Ancient.
Well, Jim is discarded, so he's happy. You saw him speed up that turn. Discard, sculpt my hand, pass the turn back.
Carded 3 lands and an end hostilities.
There's an attack for 1. 22 to 11. Nomad Outpost past the turn back.
Still no Butcher by Brad.
Super patient.
Yeah, I don't know what's waiting on. As Jim rebuilds here, I think things will just get worse for Brad.
Last Breath is going to stay on top of the deck. That's an answer to the Wayfinder. Brad going to draw a card. I think what Brad is waiting for here is he wants to play 2 spells in one turn, right? He wants to go like Butcher, counter it, Siege Rhino. Do you have another counter spell? Though, if you can see Brad's hand, he does have 3 copies of Lightning Strike.
I mean, that's what he's waiting for here, right? Jim is at 10, and Brad has 3 Lightning Strikes.
Jim's going to draw the Last Breath, play the Fountain, go up to 12.
That does take care of the Lightning Strike plan for now. Brad does play a 4th Lightning Strike, though, right?
Yep.
Well,
4 of those 4 Crackling Dooms.
yeah, remember those 2 Dooms did deal 4 to Jim.
Well, now he's making his move, finally. I like it that he's making his move now, too, when Jim has 7 mana, because this will be a Pearl Lake turn if he doesn't.
Right.
So now Brad's kind of forcing his hand, saying, okay, are you going to counter this? Probably. But that means that you don't get to cast Pearl Lake Ancient on this board.
This is really as long as Brad could have waited.
There's Nullify. So there that goes.
See, Jim trying to use the most specific counter spells first.
There's a Chain of the Rocks in Brad's hand. That has shown up at the wrong time. Hiya. In for 1.
Yeah, Jim down to 11. Remember, this is closer than it might look. Pearl Lake Ancient, a very good inevitable win condition. It's slow, though. It's real slow.
Looks like he may have Last Breath that before damage, which, to be fair, I would like. Yep, going to keep that life total high. So he's going to stay at 12, play a Delta, pass the turn back. So a virtual 11 here if Jim wants to sacrifice that land, as Nelson will draw a card.
He may not sacrifice it also. Jim trying to get a idea of what Brad's deck list is for game 2.
Here's Sarkin. 2 of in Nelson's deck.
Multiple disdainful strokes in Jim's hand. He has a lot of ways to deal with it. We'll see which one he wants to use.
Oh, use the stroke. It's got to go. There's a Wayfinder.
To put to the test, just how much is Jim going to counter and kill everything? We already saw him last breath one Zeta Wayfinder. Wonder if he'll do it again.
Take a look at a couple cards here.
Siege Rhino and Crackling Doom again banned. This time, though, Jim knows about Murderous Cut. Another one of those cards that's really going to be dead game 1 on Brad's side.
Yeah, he knows he's going to sideboard Murderous Cut out. That's what he knows now. That's not staying in the deck after sideboard. Not against blue-white control. Jim going to sacrifice a Delta, go down to 11, get an island out of his deck. Players going to pick up their pace to play a little bit. Game number 1 has taken a while here. It has been an interesting back-and-forth affair, though, between Nelson and Davis.
Right.
Davis will draw cards, copy, dissolve. That's the one thing I actually like about this control deck more than some of the other ones. It has so much counter magic.
Yes, this is I think the biggest pure control deck of the format right now. Blue-black is very similar in that regard, but just a lot of removal.
Brad going to sacrifice his Bloodstained Mire, get the swamp out of his deck. For those of you wondering at home, his basic count, 3 mountains, 2 forests, 1 swamp. So his fetch lands are pretty busy. Interesting. Really interesting game.
Yeah. Well, what I've been interested in is how Brad played Butcher of the Horde there. It feels like this is getting away from Brad. I mean, it certainly is on the board. However, Brad does have a lot of burn. He doesn't have to sneak too much damage by.
Courser of Krufix, the draw. I do wonder if we see the attack of Jim. Yeah, I was curious if Jim may say, okay, Prolic Ink should come in down and eat this thing. But no, rather leave the shield's up. Some mana is being reached for here by Nelson. This is a Courser.
That will probably get a response from Jim of some sort.
Now, how much does he care about this one is the question. He's got Dissolve. I think he's got a Last Breath in his hand right now. And he says, okay, that's fine. Top card's Temple of Plenty. Comes into play. Trigger. Scry Time. Forest. No thanks. Sarkin. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Don't mind if I do ski.
Courser doing its work there probably before it gets Last Breath.
Perlick with 1 mana available in. We're untapping. We're drawing.
All right, well, it looks like the Leviathan's going to get to stick around for a bit here.
Elspeth the draw. Prolication is the game ender for this deck. Yes, Elspeth can get the job done, but it's a little bit different altogether here.
A lot of options in Jim's hand. He has to have make sure he has Sarkhan covered, which he does in hit the Dissolve.
You see Jim set the lands aside over there, the 2 fountains in the temple. Looks like he's got a plan for those. May involve bouncing him back with Prolongation, maybe. But here's a Banishing Light. He says, Courser, you gotta go. Here's an attack. Can't forget about the Prowess trigger, too.
Right, so that'll deal 7, not 6. But Jim is at 10. Remember, Brad has 3 lightning strikes, and he has a 1/1 on the board.
Brad might be considering chump blocking, or he could just be feigning interest.
You never really know with Brad.
I mean, there's a lot of gamesmanship going on in this match, and in
yeah.
this game right now, for sure. Wow, Jim is okay.
It's the right play here, too. He's aggressively gaining life. It's how he loses. Perlic Ancient is really just an inevitable win con. You don't try to win quickly with it at all.
Pick up the Radiant Fountain, go back to 12.
Play Radiant Fountain.
Yep.
All right.
Exactly 7 cards in hand. And have 6 mana available. Yeah, I'll go back down to 11. This is a really good game.
Yeah, it does seem like it's going Jim's way, especially with these Radiant Fountains, but Brad just keeps being so close to having a lethal amount of burn.
And the last thing that Jim wants to use his burn spells on are lightning strike, or his counter spells on are lightning strikes.
Exactly.
He wants to counter Siege Rhinos. He wants to counter the Sarkin that's in Brad's hand. He doesn't want to dissolve a lightning strike. Brad draws a copy of Sylvan Caryatid for the turn. Ooh, didn't mean to show you.
Chain to the rock.
Yeah, well, it doesn't really change all that much.
It's Sarkhan.
Yep.
And once again, Brad has done this on the turn where Jim has 7 mana, so it's to stop Pearl Lake Ancient.
Stroke it. 1 you. Puts you to 12.
Has Brad drawn the 4th Lightning Strike yet?
Well, I think the thing that Brad's going to be unhappy about is that Jim drew a copy of Dig Through Time. Jim's going to take a look at the graveyard, try to pick up a little bit of information here.
What could Brad have in his hand? Brad has had a lot of cards for a long time.
Just Caryatid. Is Jim going to pull the trigger on the dig here? I joked at the beginning of the match, we're not going to have a draw, are we? But well, this game 1 is taking a lot longer than we thought.
You only need one game.
That's true. Take a look at 7 of them. And Brad wants to get an idea of how many cards you have left, but you get to take 2 of these and the other 5 go back in the deck, so.
Right. There's an Elspeth. I don't think he certainly will take the Dissolve. The question is whether he wants Elspeth or Radiant Fountain as his second card.
I would want the Fountain. Give me some more life,
Looks
baby.
like it too.
Yes, sir.
And there you have good 2 cards from Jim.
How many fountains you got there? 3 or 4?
4.
Oh, 4. Wow, okay. This is like the 4 Mutavault approach.
One of them got discarded after he had that double Pearl Lake turn, and the other 2 are on the battlefield. So that's the 4th one.
Radiant Fountain is one of those cards that feels like a 2 or a 3 of. You know, and we kind of saw that with Mutavault and Blue-White Control last year. It's like, how many of these do I play? It's like, no, it's actually okay to play 4 because they're so good.
Yeah, I think you definitely want 4. I think it's, though, if you didn't have Pearl Lake Ancient in the format, you might not run 4. But that interaction it's actually very crucial to the deck.
And it's proven to be quite good here, isn't it? That's for sure. Well, here is the Pearl Lake Ancient. That's going to come down now, and I might be trying to eat this. Oh, Brad, Murder's Cut in most instances not very good in this matchup, but I don't know if it's a timely top deck, but it's a top deck nonetheless. Murder's Cut's going to go after the Pearl Lake Ancient, and now Jim has a decision to make yet again, and it looks like he's going to make the same decision, which is, let's pick up some lands here. Let's work our way towards these temples and these Radiant Fountains and put my Ancient back in my hand. The fact that he can protect this way makes it really tough for Brad to beat, but he says, all right, I'll pick it up. I don't get to block, but I quickly untap. Draw a copy of Divination. Don't need one of those. And there's a Radiant Fountain. He's going back up to 13. We're doing this dance between 13 and 11 again and again and again.
All right, so once again, looking at cards to keep here in Jim's hand, he's been able to stay just enough life to not be dead here for a while. And now we go to Brad's turn, and Jim's back down to 12. Brad's still not with the 4th Lightning Strike. We'll go back to Jim, who's now at 14. Once again, replays a Radiant Fountain. You see he has the 3rd one in his hand. He'll pass back the turn. Brad will fetch. Brad has since added Butcher of the Horde to his hand, full of burn. A threat which we might see him make, though he's can't imagine it will stick too much, but with Jim on 7 cards, this is at the point where Brad has been casting spells to keep Jim off Pearl Lake Ancient. So will he go for Butcher? He will, where Jim's on 7. Jim has 3 dissolves in hand. Pearl Lake will get one of the dissolves. Or Butcher, rather, will get dissolved.
You can't let that resolve. He's looking at another dissolve now, too, and for 1.
So he's got the whole set of dissolves coming up here.
It's just been like this game has just been kind of like this jockeying for position of when am I supposed to deploy my threats and what do you have and how highly do you value Pearl Lake Ancient. And, you know, the entire time, the second Crackling Doom that turned many turns ago, I think I would have let Pearl Lake Ancient go. And now that we're watching how the game plays out, I think I would have just been very wrong.
You can't let the Pearl Lake go, apparently.
Yeah, apparently not.
Right.
Ooh, now, okay.
That's the 4th Lightning Strike.
Okay. Is there some way that Brad can finagle this?
Well, he's got Jim at 12.
Yep.
So if Jim goes for end step Pearl Lake Ancient, Brad is going to kill him.
Okay. Oh my God. Oh
And there he goes.
my God.
And Brad steals game 1 out from under Jim's nose.
Brad Nelson is going to win game number 1 here over Jim Davis. It is the 4th lightning strike that gets the job done. I'd be smiling too if I were Brad. What a way to steal that back and forth game. And think about it, the entire time.
I mean, Jim's got to know that he let
Yeah.
he let that one go.
Yeah, I mean, does he have to cast a prolongation there? No, not really, because he has all that counter magic in his hand. How much longer is he supposed to wait? Kind of tough to say, but it definitely feels like Brad stole that.
Okay, absolutely agree. And Jim was very cognizant of his life total too. He was very aggressively recasting those Radiant Fountains.
Yep. What a heck of a game there. Probably best SCG moment there. As we do take a look at the sideboards, we will start with Jim Davis. You are the control expert, so I'll let you take a look at that.
All right, so we look at Jim Davis's sideboard. He has extra copies of just different kinds of removal in his sideboard. By and large, he doesn't have too much to board in here. He does have copies of negates he could use. Against a Siege Rhino Butcher of the Horde deck, he has 2 copies of Reprisal, which is a cheaper, more effective way to deal with them. It's probably better than the copies of Last Breath he has in his deck. Also, he has 3 Brimaz. Because of the threats that Brad's playing, I doubt he'll be using those in this matchup, as they probably still won't be able to sneak by. Brad's not going to board out the Siege Rhinos or Butchers, and Brimaz is pretty poor against those cards.
Take a look at things over here. I've got a Glare of Heresy and Johnny Mentor of Heroes, 3 copies of Xenagos the Reveler, 2 Thoughtseizes, 2 Utter Ends, 4 Anger of the Gods, and then 2 copies of Event Hostilities. One thing we've learned about Brad over the past couple of months, you think about Pro Tour Khans of Tarkir. When he played there, he played that red-white aggro mid-range control deck. So it was an aggro deck game 1 that could transform into a Planeswalker, Zen Hostilities deck in game number 2. Ended up getting 30th place at that Pro Tour. His deck was all over the place. It was really a pretty big talk of the tournament, how he could just transform to doing different things all across the board. He can do the same thing here. That's why you see the Wrath effects, but he could also turn into a Planeswalker control deck, which I think are going to be really good for him in this matchup. 3 Xenagos, 2 Thoughtseize for disruption, and an additional Johnny Mentor of Heroes over here. Wouldn't be surprised to see the Glare of Heresy, too. Takes care of Elspeth and Banishing Light.
Yeah, Glare of Heresy seems excellent in this matchup. Post-board, this is a much better matchup for Brad.
I think winning game 1 is such a big deal for him, and he was able to steal it with that 4th lightning strike.
Yeah, well, not to mention you're starting game 2 with 17 minutes remaining in the round. That's gonna be really hard for Jim Davis. If Jim expects a Planeswalker heavy sideboard, he also can board in his 1 copy of Fated Retribution. But this matchup's just gonna be that much harder. Brad has almost an entire sideboard to bring in here.
Quick conversation for you guys about our invitational schedule for 2015. They've been announced. We know where we're going to be. We know what the format's going to look like, and we are looking forward to it.
Yeah, for the first time ever, we will be including Modern in some of our invitationals. So invitationals will be a split format, as always. The first and third ones, this is Richmond in March and New Jersey, they will still be your Standard and Legacy, but with Columbus and Seattle, we will be splitting between Standard and Modern for the invitationals.
Pretty happy to bring Modern over. You also see we've flipped the order for some of them, so the top 8s are different. You see in Richmond, we'll have a Standard top 8, then in Columbus, a Modern top 8, Legacy top 8 in Jersey, Standard top 8 in Seattle. So again, we know there are some big Modern fans out there. Our Premier IQs have had a great attendance. We expect the same this weekend here from Richmond. So we're able to bring Modern to you not only on Open Series events, but also for our invitationals. So that is going to be sweet. Hope you guys are looking forward to that. Dates are there for you. You can find out more information at StarCityGames.com, as game number 2 is going to be underway here between number 10 on our leaderboard for Season 4, Jim Davis, and number 12 on our leaderboard, Brad Nelson. Both these players looking for Open Series points to qualify for the Players' Championship.
Yeah, both players on the cusp here of those last qualifying spots, especially for Brad Nelson, who is in that last spot. A big showing here would really be helpful. He currently only has the lead by 5 points over the next player, so anything he could do to pad that would be very helpful.
Evolving Wilds here for Davis. He's going to sacrifice that while Nelson will play a Temple of Plenty and get his Scry on, so he's going to get an island. You're going to see an accelerated pace of play probably from both players here, but certainly Jim. He's the blue-white control deck. He's down a game with about 16 minutes left. His deck does not win quickly. We know that.
No, and he didn't expect to lose game 1 here, and you could tell with his pace of play at the end of the game there, you know, I think he felt like he had that one more or less locked up, so he was okay slowing it down. He's okay playing at Brad's pace, but now the pacing has changed.
Cedar Wayfinder is going to find a copy of Sansep Citadel. The rest of the lands, the Forest, the Mountain, and the Temple of Plenty, those will go into the graveyard. Davis is going to play Radiant Fountain up 22.
Brad does have to be careful about milling mountains. Remember, he only actually plays 3 basic mountains, so if he mills a second one off a Cedar Wayfinder, say, that is a concern.
Well, here's another one. We're going to give it a go. There's a Rhino, a Mana Confluence. A Llanowar Waste and a Sylvan Carry added. Nelson will take the Mana Confluence. That'll do some nice fixing of the mana here. His life total is never really under duress in this matchup. That's a Sandstorm Citadel. He'll just pass the turn back over to Davis. Davis will draw another copy of Radiant Fountain. He's up 23.
Yeah. As we saw last game, these Satyr Wayfinders their damage can actually add up in this matchup.
Yeah, just a little chipping away. Changes the way the game has to be played. It's time to attack for 2. Undo what Radiant Fountain has done. So Davis back down to 21. Nelson does have a Courser of Crewfix that he will attempt to deploy. Davis is looking at a kind of a strange hand, actually, because he's got 2 colorless lands in play and then an island and a Flooded Strand. In a perfect world, he'd be able to sack that and go get a Hallowed Fountain, but we don't live in that world anymore, so he actually has to go get a basic island.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like it's going to be a Dissolve.
Yeah. Doesn't want to get too far behind on the board. He wants to not set up a spot where he has to end hostilities.
Take a look at the top card for Scry. Well, there's your white source.
There you
Tranquil
go.
Cove is what Jim has found. Nelson is going to play Mana Confluence and a Thoughtseize. Let's see what's going on over here. There's Dig Through Time. There's Nelspeth. Looks like there's a copy of Reprisal. Also a Glare of Heresy and a Banishing Light. So this is kind of insane.
I mean, this is why these mid-range matchups just get so tough post-board for the control decks cards. Like, I mean, Thoughtseize is really the card that's great against control.
I wonder if Brad has him read for having a white source of mana on top of his deck. You see this hand, and you just go, I'll just take the Dig Through Time. You can't cast any of your spells. We're good to go. Hopefully he doesn't draw a white source.
Yeah, he's got a white source.
Yeah, and he's got a white source on top of his deck.
What else would he scry to the top? Divination, maybe.
Yeah.
That's
there are like a couple cards, right? Like Divination.
That's about it.
If you saw Jason's Ingenuity, would you leave it on top?
That's really hard. No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
I think you think about it for a while.
Yeah, no, it's really close because you already have card draw and Dig Through Time. So I think, yeah, that's a great one if you hit your land, but I think the premium is too high. I think, no, it'd be land. It's white mana or bust. Divination's fine because it's redraw.
There's the Cove. It's going to come into play. Davis is going to go up to 21. That's his white source of mana. You saw Brad take Banishing Light with Thoughtseize. Nelson will draw. That's another copy of Thoughtseize. He's going to sacrifice the Wooded Foothills. He's going to go searching. It's a mountain. He's got some intentions of casting something big. Yep, it's a Sarkhan. Let's see what this is.
Knows it resolves.
Yep.
Get perfect information there.
Yep, he's going to cast a Dig, will Jim. So Jim's going to take a look at the top 7. Brad's able to get in a big hit of damage there.
It's interesting how up until this point, Brad really put such a low priority on resolving threats. He's just being disruptive more than anything else. You know, making a couple Satyr Wayfinders, chipping in a little bit of damage with them, and then finally, once he's Thoughtseize, setting up this Sarkhan. A lot of options for Jim.
Yeah. Jason's Ingenuity and Divination are the ones that he's pulled forward. Of course, you can take lands if you want. You can take any 2 cards there.
Well, Jim's probably going to have to Banishing Light that Sarkhan, and Brad knows it, that's going to happen.
Looks like he wants a Divination, too. Passing up on some mana, but those cards are going to go to the bottom. Davis going to quickly untap and draw, Dissolve.
It was very aggressive on Jim's part to not take a land there.
Must be hoping he divinates into one. It's a risk.
If he leads on Divination here, that's a big risk. And one he's not willing to take.
Yep. Pass the turn back. Brad's quickly untapping. I'd be scared if I were Jim.
Well, here's the thing. So these blue-white control decks don't need as many lands as your typical control deck. So not getting a land is, of course, not great, but is fine.
Here's some thoughts. You see Divination, Elspeth, Reprisal, Glare of Heresy, and a Dissolve. Oddly enough, Nelson's not clearing the way for anything. At least it seems that way with his Thoughtseize.
Clearing the way for Satyr Wayfinders. I mean, and that's only half a joke.
Yeah.
The Satyr Wayfinders will eventually force Jim to do something.
And they did last game.
Yeah. Well, that and 4 lightning strikes.
We know Brad has a copy of Crackling Doom in his hand. And he says, get your counter spell out of here. So, bye-bye Dissolve. Brad's going to play a Sandstorm Citadel and pass the turn back. Jim will be divinating, I think, in a moment here.
Yeah.
Yep. Couple of lands drawn. Flooded Strand and a Tranquil Cove. Temple of Enlightenment's going to come down. Take a look at the top card. Flooded Strand's going to go to the bottom.
He's got his land set up. He has to think. So Brad has cleared the way with Dissolve. What is he clearing the way for? Right now, it looks like not much.
Didn't get a great look at the draw. May have been a Sarkhan, but one card that Brad actually does have in his hand is an Elspeth, and that's another Planeswalker. It is a Xenagos is what he's drawn. So how do we lead out here?
Well, what Brad knows about, he knows about Reprisal and Glare of Heresy. None of those take care of Xenagos. The only card that Jim could have here that takes care of one of them would be Disdainful Stroke. Looks like Brad's just going to continue to make more 1/1s, and I like this because it starts to overload some of Jim's mana. Yeah, this is going to get Glare of Heresy. Brad knows that.
But that's okay.
But that's okay. And then there's 5 power on the board.
So there are 3 soldiers. You mentioned 5 power on the board. Yes, sir. Davis will draw. Looked like it was a copy of Nullify.
Yeah, he drew a Nullify, but he's going to have to Glare the Elspeth. But then what is he going to do about the 1/1s?
Well. Wow,
he may just have to, yeah.
Yeah, this is interesting.
Make his own Elspeth.
I think he has to make his own Elspeth. Yeah, he's going to do that. He's going to play a Tranquil Cove and then pass the turn back, and now we're going to have like the soldier battle.
Well, now Brad gets to resolve the Xenagos if he wants to. He's forced Jim to tap out.
Yeah, Jim has to hope that nothing terrible happens this turn. Doesn't have much of a choice. Brad's going to sacrifice a Bloodstained Mire. Now, here's the really compelling thing is, does Jim actually have End Hostilities in his deck after sideboard? If so, how many? That's the kind of card that can reset things.
Right. I mean, it's his only real sweeper. Otherwise, these X1s are really difficult to deal with. He can block them with Pearl Lake Ancient. He can... That's about it. He can block them with Bramaz if he boarded it in. Otherwise, he has to just kill them with Elspeth tokens. I can't imagine he boarded out all 3 End Hostilities. Maybe he cuts some, but it seems like you would need 1.
Crackling Doom? Yep. Tick Elspeth down. Yeah, that's really nice. Yeah, so, you know, Crackling Doom has been one of my favorite cards in this format for a little while, but you would think that Crackling Doom in this matchup is bad, and it's serving its purpose, working down an Elspeth, getting that soldier token off the table, can deal some damage. We saw it in the last game with the Prolongation interactions.
Right.
Just a really, really good card.
And thanks to the Crackling Doom and the Xenagos, he's going to be able to get Jim's Elspeth down. He has to send 5 creatures at the Elspeth.
Yep, that's exactly what he's going to do.
So that no matter what Jim blocks, the Elspeth dies.
I'm just a little curious about how you actually block here.
He can either take 2 damage or he can kill 2. He can either kill 2 creatures or take 2 damage. And take 2 damage or do neither. He's going to trade it with 2 tokens.
Might be okay, he'll trade with the 2 tokens. I wasn't sure if he was going to trade with the Satyr Wayfinders or not. All this may not matter because I think it might be on Jim to actually just draw in hostilities. Oh, thought that was it. Banishing Light instead.
Well, he's got Banishing Light and Glare of Heresy. He can take care of the Planeswalkers, but he is still taking 8 this turn, which would bring him to 2.
So I'm going to quickly reorganize some things. There's Banishing Light. Take care of Xenagos. There's Glare of Heresy. Take care of this.
And
JD needs an End Hostilities really bad. Brad's going to draw a card. I think it was a Rhino. I think he also has a Crackling Doom in his hand.
Rhino or Doom would be lethal here.
Yeah, and he's flipping between both, so he's going to shrug his shoulders and attack with everything. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points of damage. Davis is going to go down to 2.
Yeah, one of them's in a Johnny.
Okay, never mind. Yep, and that's going to do it. Brad Nelson going to win this match here over Jim Davis. 2-0. 4-color mid-range. Going to take down blue-white control in 2 very, very entertaining games. This deck may look greedy on the surface, and to be fair, it definitely is, but it is winning quite a few matches here.
Game 1, good for Jim. One that got away from him. A real close game. But it's those post-board games that really make these mid-range decks so strong. They can just change into whatever they need to be for the matchup.
Brad is just right now really tuned into Standard, I think. You know, we saw him